Welcome to DABCC Radio,
where smart people listen.
Virtualization and Cloud Talk.
Featuring cutting-edge solutions from the hottest companies around the globe.
Broadcasting from the DABCC offices in sunny Sarasota, Florida.
Surrounded by computers, books, and Legos.
A Microsoft MVP, Citrix Charter CTP, VMware vExpert.
And your host, Douglas Brown.
Hello, I'm Doug Brown, and I am back with another episode of DABCC Radio. You know, we're 10 years into this thing now. Can you believe it? Darn, I wish I was 1 year in, because I was a lot younger than I am. But I'm really excited because over that 10 years, we have had a lot of great podcasts. And the very first podcast we had was a company called Thinstall. And the guy that was part of that podcast, or helped me set that podcast up, was a gentleman named Henrik Rosendahl. And Henrik is a serial entrepreneur. This guy is the goods. And he's at a new company called NeuVector. And we brought these guys on when they just came out of stealth mode. Well, they're out. They're in the wild. The product is released. It's ready for prime time. Have at it, right? And today we're going to teach you about what this is, what this means to you, all that jazz. So with no further ado, I'm really excited to have Henrik Rosendahl from NeuVector with us to tell us and teach us all about what they're doing in the container security world. So here we go. Okay, Henrik, thanks so much for taking the time to be with us. It's glad to have you back on the show again. So I love having you on, and thank you for taking the time to do this.
Thanks, Doc. It's always fun to be here with you.
Oh, it truly is. I love having you. You're one of my favorite guests. So that being said, you know, for those who don't know who you are, and they should, I always tell people, you know, Henrik, you should know. This is a guy you should know. So can you tell us a bit about yourself and, you know, your entrepreneurial career, if I can spit that out?
Yeah, sure. You know, I'm what you would call a serial entrepreneur, right? I think I'm probably now involved in my 10th startup, which is NeuVector, and you know we're doing Docker network security, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you know, before that, I was the CEO of Thinstall that we sold to VMware, and I was also the chairman of CloudVolumes that we also sold to VMware. So I've been living and breathing, you know, Citrix and VMware and now Docker for the last, 15 years.
You got it. And I met you way back in 2004 when you were doing the Primatech stuff. So
oh, that's right.
Yeah. Anybody? I've known you for more than a decade now. How's that treat you?
That's how I got to meet your ITIL guys.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, really? I did not know that.
We were doing Citrix end-user monitoring, right? And we were the only solution back then that could do that without putting an agent on the client device, but do it from the Citrix server itself.
Oh, that's very cool. That's very cool. Can anybody do that now? No, I'm joking.
I don't know.
Yeah, there's tons of them that can.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. So that being said, you guys have we had you on the show months ago and talking about NeuVector, and you guys were still just out of stealth mode at that time, right? So and starting to preach the message and what you guys are doing. So since then, you're live. The product's out there. It's in the wild. Yep. People are using it. You got customers. People downloading it. Bring us up to speed. Who is NeuVector?
Yeah, so you know, we decided to launch the company here at RSA a couple of weeks ago. You know, we've been out installing the product in a beta since last summer. You know, we've got some very sizable organizations now using the product. You know, we've been predominantly going after the big enterprises, and so you know, it always takes a while to get the kinks out of a new product, in particular when you go into sort of an enterprise customer, they have their own set of requirements, right? So we felt now was a good time to launch the company and launch the product officially, and you know, getting the sort of the public attention and press that we deserve.
That's great. And why did you decide to do it now? Because of RSA, or just guys are ready to do it? What's the
look? I mean, RSA was just sort of like the timing, right?
forcing factor?
Yeah, exactly. It was a good place. It was a good venue this year. RSA had a startup area over at the Marriott Marquis across from Moscone, where 40 of the coolest security startups were gathered in this hall. So we didn't get drowned out in the sort of the hoopla of the big exhibition hall, and people came over with a sort of a startup, what's new, what's cool mindset. So that was great. And then a lot of organizations out there are starting to form opinions about how to go about their DevOps processes, and an important part of that is security, of course. And so we felt it was time to go public and become a part of all the different research out there. 451 just wrote a report on us, and Gartner, and all these other guys. So we're sort of ready to talk about the product.
That's great. That's great. That's great. And I want to digress a second. Containers are, you mentioned DevOps, right? And containers are really all the rage nowadays. I think, was it you, the one that told me that if Docker has, the joke is if there's a, Docker had $1 for every Docker logo that was on people's websites, they would be the richest company in the world?
I don't know that. That's probably true.
Yeah. So right? Someone told me that. I thought it was you, but someone told me that. And so, but it's sort of lived in this DevOps world right now, right? And do you see it coming out of DevOps? I don't know why it's not limited to DevOps, but you had mentioned that, and just want to throw that at you.
Look, it's an interesting evolution, right? Where all of a sudden you're putting more and more autonomy in the hands of DevOps, right? You're breaking down the barriers. You're giving them tools to have more control. But with that also comes more risk, right? That let's face it. And so if you look at the security aspect of software engineering, this is not something that developers traditionally have been concerned about. And so, you got this, tension point in between the DevOps freight train that is moving and will not be stopped. And the security and the operations guys in the enterprises that are like, whoa, wait a minute, my job is on the line if we mess this up, right? So how do we find a balance where I don't slow you down with the traditional security audits and waterfall models and this and that, but on the other hand, we don't expose the company to sort of unnecessary risk, right? That's where most of the enterprises are at today.
Interesting. I mean, I love containers, and it doesn't have a cost to it, right? There, I mean, when I say cost, I mean performance cost, the way virtualization does, and doesn't have the security vulnerabilities the way virtualization does. But that being said, let's get off of containers. Let's talk about your container security solution. So, what do you see the difference between NeuVector and the other security solutions out there? I mean, why should somebody continue listening to us, right, and care about what you guys are doing?
Well, I mean, that is sort of, startup 101 is, do you have a differentiated product, right? That's the only way you can win, right, in this space, in any startup, space. And so we have a very differentiated, offering. We go at this from a real-time network security angle, right? So if you have traditionally been a part of a security group in an enterprise, setting, and you've been dealing with, Cisco, Palo Alto, Fortinet firewalls, this is the continuation of that, right? Where, think of NeuVector as an advanced firewall for containers, right? That's the short 10-second pitch, right? We're doing, true layer 7 east-west deep packet inspection, and then, we're adding a bunch of, technology on top of that.
For people that are not familiar with NeuVector, your solution, can you describe the solution itself? What is it? How does it work? What does it take to install? What are the, things like that, right?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of this is that we're just another container, right? So we can be installed with something as simple as Docker Compose. Kubernetes, Mesos, Ranger, it doesn't matter, right? We're just one of the containers. You need one NeuVector container on every host that you want to protect. And the moment you drop us in, we hook up to the Linux network bridge, and then we start looking at all the traffic that is going on between containers. And then from that, we use machine learning to basically establish a baseline for what is considered normal network traffic patterns. And anything outside of quote unquote normal will be inspected and flagged or blocked, right? And because we are in the network, we have the ability to surgically remove network sessions that we consider suspicious, right? Where some of the other guys in town will have to kill the entire container because they're using IP tables and we're not.
So you said machine learning, and that's definitely artificial intelligence. They changed the name to machine learning. And basically, you guys are collecting a lot of data about all this stuff, and then you're taking actions against it. Can you talk a bit about what that means, or what you guys are doing on the machine learning front? How does that work? If you could describe it.
I'll describe it in sort of layman's terms.
Sure,
right?
Please.
So for us, it's a traditional firewall only has network insight, right? Because we're sitting on the Docker host, we have access to applications, to processes, to host information, a bunch of other stuff, right? And we're looking at the network traffic patterns, and anything that falls outside of the baseline will be inspected, right? We will do first the header, and then we'll look deeper into the metadata, and we will then correlate that with the information we have about the processes and the applications running, right? And so all of a sudden, if we see something suspicious, like there's a reverse flow of network traffic, or some container starts contacting an external host somewhere and has never done that before, we then will look at, what does this container look like? Are there any known vulnerabilities in this container? So on and so forth, and then we will take action, right? And that's kind of the machine learning part of this. Is we will eventually take action on behalf of the user, right? So another example is we have a zero trust model. So if you put a new container on the host we're installed on, we will not allow this container to run before we have actually scanned it, right? And so we force scan every new container on the host. We don't care how many times it's been scanned previously in the DevOps process. We force scan it when we see it the first time. And if we deem that this has too many high vulnerabilities, we will not allow this container to run. And that's based on a multitude of different parameters, right? And they get updated all the time.
Very interesting. Are you able to learn from all your customers, or are you learning within that particular environment? How far does that stretch?
Yeah, I mean, look, we have the ability to learn from our customers, right? But we haven't turned that feature on yet.
Okay.
If there are if there's some people in an organization that are paranoid about sharing information, it's the security people, right? Yeah. And so this sort of idea of, hey, look, we have a global repository of all known vulnerabilities, let's all share. It's a little bit of a pipe dream, but it's a combination, right? Of things that, for instance, a good example is Kafka, right? Has a tendency to actually call itself on the network, right? The first time we saw that, a year ago, that looked suspicious, right? That's something our algorithm would pick up as being highly suspicious. Now we know Kafka has a tendency to do that, so we will just ignore it, right? WordPress, the same thing. So it's a combination of what we see in customer POCs and environments, as well as the sort of the intelligence that we add to our platform.
Very cool. Yeah, I guess you have a very good point. Your security solution, then you're going to go into talk to security guys and say, hey, and why don't you share all this data publicly? They're going to look at you and say, do you realize who you're talking to and what solution you're making? In the future, that'll change, but right now, it's the wrong type of clientele, right? That being said, what type of customers are you targeting?
I mean, we're going after the Fortune 500s, right? The big companies, they're all looking at Docker, they're all looking at Kubernetes, they're all figuring out how to do this in a combination of on-prem and just traditionally sort of AWS, right? And they all have a security group that is under pressure to not slow down DevOps, but not mess up the security either. And so they seem to be, they're well versed in network security. We speak the same language. We have the ability to run, multiple controllers across multiple clouds. So we have a way of literally in real time updating policies in AWS as well as on-prem, right? And they seem to like that.
Cool. What are some of the pain points they're experiencing? Is it just a pure security play, or is there something specific to containers that these guys are, running into right now that you guys solve?
Well, there's a multitude of issues, right? One of them is the DevOps process itself, right? Where you're moving a lot of the responsibility onto the developer, right? And giving that developer a lot more autonomy and freedom to, code and release at their leisure. And by doing so, you're also implicitly saying, hey, make sure that, all your stuff is up to date and there's no known vulnerabilities and so on and so forth. And that's just not been, traditionally what a developer does. And so, that is the sort of the contention here, right? Is this, how do we make sure that your containerized environment is secure while not slowing down the DevOps train, right? That is that's definitely the major pain point we see. You also see stuff like visualizing the network traffic across hosts. The moment you drop us in, we start drawing a real-time network diagram of how all your containers are talking to each other. That usually is a sort of a wow moment for customers, right? Because they're like, wow, we had no idea that this was going on. So that's another part. And simply, the idea of, this is such a dynamic environment. It is meaningless to try and lock things down based on IP addresses and ports, right? And trying to sort of keep a traditional firewall script up to date, right? It's just too dynamic for that. And so people are trying to look for the next generation, firewalls for this, and that's where we fit in.
You got it. Yeah, the old ways, the world's changing, right, Henrik? And the old ways of doing things are no longer valid, and they've changed a couple times now in the past, since I've known you, which is quite strange, right? For ages, we didn't have a lot of change, and I guess that's
true. Every decade, right, has its sort of claim to fame.
Yeah, well, we have the next big things, right? 80s the hardware, 90s the software, 2000s is a search cloud, or internet, not cloud, I guess. Now we're in the mobile world. And then we have all the back end pieces and what have you. So that being said, that segues me nicely. I love chatting with you. You always segue me perfectly, and you don't even know what I'm going to ask you. So that being said, 2007, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but 2017 is shaping out to be, we hear a lot about containers. What do you see 2000 shaping out to be for containers? Is this the year of containers, or should I not say that to jinx it?
Oh, well, look, we said this is the year of VDI.
That's why I say that.
Right? So for the love of God, don't jinx it. But having said that, every large company out there is sort of looking at it, doing it to some extent, right? The big difference between back in the day when VMware sort of became a viable platform, all you had to do was to basically do a P2V conversion, and then you could run your physical server half an hour later as a virtual machine, right?
Yep.
No there was no need to re-architect anything, right? You literally just took your old server and it turned into a virtual machine. Microservices is a different game, right? You have to start thinking about re-architecting the old monoliths, and that process takes longer, right?
And do you see that process happening on the software side? So in other words, like Citrix will be delivered via container. Your firewall's delivered via container. Exchange server's dead because of Office 365, but your mail servers integrated via containers. Is that the future?
Sure. Yeah, and you start sort of developing what we see is as a traditional use case is that a big company has hundreds, if not thousands, of servers already in place, right? And they are starting to build new functionality as a sort of a separate application that they're running with some calls to the old environment, right? So will your AES 400 and all your virtual machines, will they live for a long time? Yes, absolutely. And then people are starting to build smaller and nimbler apps on top of that, no question.
So what do you? Here's the $10,000 question. What do you see? Where do you see containers in 5-10 years? That's a tough one,
That's a tough one, right? It was a little bit, when VMware came out originally, right? It had a test and dev sort of use case, right? That was the workstation in the early days of ESX, right?
Sure.
And then people were like rolling their eyes when you said, "Hey, you should run your SQL server or Exchange server."
Oh, don't you remember? I'm never going to use virtualization. I'm never going to put my SQL on VMware.
For sure, right? And now you're an idiot if you don't.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be a transition, right, where these microservices become less and less micro and more macro services. But it's going to take a while, right?
Do you see a day where containers outpace virtualization?
For sure,
I do too.
Yeah, no question.
Yeah, I agree, 100%.
Will it happen in 2017? No.
No, but that's it's back to the today, especially for the visionaries out there, the guys that are thinking about the future, right? I was always told keep 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out the door. 1 foot in the future, in the today, and 1 foot into 5 years from now. What are you going to do in 5 years? You're going to be, if you're that Exchange guy, well, you're sitting there cursing Microsoft, right? So you always got to be looking for the future, and containers are definitely the future. It's fun to watch. So that being said, there are container guys out there, like you mentioned Kubernetes. How do I say that? Say that again.
Kubernetes.
Yeah, I said it properly.
Yeah.
And Docker's Forum and things. Aren't they going to throw security in those products?
Well, their primary focus, right, is the lifecycle management and the platform management, right? Clearly, and so sure, they're going to do platform security as expected of them, right? But if you look at as an analogy, VMware. Right, 15 years later, they have not embedded security into the platform. Right, they were clever enough to do vShield and then let the security companies interface to the platform. And I think there's a fine line here, of course, right, or let's call it a sort of a gray zone of what is expected of Docker and Kubernetes and Rancher, and what's expected of a security and network security company, right?
Yeah.
Will Docker and Kubernetes and the other guys, Mises, will they sort of build in intelligence that can spot a dirty cow or a slow loris attack? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't see them doing that. Well, they have other things to do, right?
Well, I think you said it perfectly, that they're a platform, right? And I think the key to success in order to be a platform is not to be an island upon yourself, not to do everything. Like you mentioned VMware. You need that ecosystem out there, right? So if you're a platform, you leave hooks for ISVs and to, build onto your platform. Now you have other companies out there evangelizing your platform, right? And that takes you to another level. If otherwise you're just a product, And everybody that's, it's like in that type of scenario or that type of business needs to be a platform that they're going to survive, right?
Exactly.
And
We see that clearly sort of happening.
that's cool. That's cool.
Oh.
I agree, Henrik. I never disagree with you. Well, sometimes I do, but usually those are
not in public and certainly not on a podcast.
yeah. Well, we don't go in that direction on a podcast.
No.
That's before and after the podcast, my buddy, my friend. So that being said, that's what I had for. I have one more question. If somebody wants to learn more, but before we get to that, we did the competition. What's your products out future? What's coming next? I mean, where are you guys going with this thing?
Well, I mean, we're going deeper and we're going wider, right? What can I say? There is an ever need for you saw the MongoDB ransomware the other day, right? The dirty cow, all that stuff. We have front row seats to seeing all the network traffic and spot that before it becomes an issue. So we're going to build more and more of that into the platform, right? As is expected of us. And the other thing, and I think I mentioned that on our last podcast, for many, many years to come, containers do not live in isolation. And so more and more of our customers are like, look, I would love to have visibility, to, our VMs or, our bare metal Linux hosts. How do we do that with NeuVector? So
interesting.
That's an obvious path we can take as well.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, if somebody wants to learn more, hopefully everyone out there is playing around with Docker and learning this stuff. If not, you should be, because like we said, it's the future. And so, they want to throw this in their labs. They want to throw it in proof of concept. They want to buy it. What do they need to do to learn more?
Well, I mean, look, since we just went public, we have a demo video on our website, and we are giving people free trials and demos left, right, and center these days. So that's a good place to start. And then we'll be at DockerCon, of course, in Austin in April.
Very cool. I'm going to be in Germany in April, but boy, I wish
in Copenhagen in the fall, by the way.
Oh, Copenhagen. Well, I need to come visit you in Copenhagen. I've never been to Copenhagen, Henrik.
The DockerCon Europe was just announced in Copenhagen.
Yeah. That's awesome. You get to go home, back to Denmark.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That would be fun to go see you in Denmark.
Right, wouldn't it?
Yeah, maybe I'll do that. That's a simple flight right on up there.
Yep.
So that being said, Henrik, that's what I had for you. So if there's anything we left out, this is your time, to have the last word and.
Hey, always appreciate being here, Doug. It's always super fun, and I hope it was useful.
Absolutely. I learned a little bit, and I've been staying up to date with you guys. I find it cool. Anything Henrik does, there's a few people I've met, for the people out there listening, a few people I've met in my life that I just sort of pay attention to. They're the guys that are always on the cutting edge, always on the front of the wave, right? And Henrik is one of those. So the guy's been blessed, but yet it was because of his, understanding the market. To have, that's why he's a serial entrepreneur, from things like Thin App, to CloudVolumes, you name it, and even Primatech way back, that was so far ahead of what everybody else was doing. So, I follow what you're doing very, very closely, and it's not because we're friends, it's because I want to learn, because I know the smart guys, and you're one of them. So that being said, guys listening, definitely check out what they're doing. Definitely play with Docker if you're not. This is the future. So Henrik, thank you so much for taking the time to be here.
Great to be here again, Doug.
Okay, so that concludes another successful episode of DABCC Radio. I love having Henrik on, guys. I really do. Henrik is a great human being. He really honestly is. I've known the guy forever, but between you and I and everyone else listening, he's always been helpful to me. And these are the people I love, and this is what I ask of you, and this is what I ask of myself, is be helpful. Help another person out. If they have a question, answer it. If you see that they don't know something, explain. I got very lucky. I'm sitting here today because of a gentleman named Douglas Shreve, and Douglas was a guy that was a senior consultant when I was just moving into engineering. And he took a liking to me. He said, "Kid, I'm going to help you and I'm going to teach you." And as a young kid, I wanted to learn. I was hungry. I wanted to do it. This is the greatest job ever, right? And the guy took me under his wing and taught me everything I know. And if you remember my methodology in a box document, that was my thank you to him. And if you have it, read the overview, and it's all about him because he took his time to share with me. And this is what Henrik is. Henrik has always been a guy that stopped and would teach me something. Stop and tell me I'm wrong. Stop and just make me a better human being. And like I said in the podcast, in the interview process, he was somebody also that, or he is somebody that I follow. That when Henrik goes to a new company or he's investing in someone and it comes through LinkedIn or he tells me about it, I pay attention to this company because the guy's no dummy. He's not even smart. He's super smart, right? He's way up that chain. So truly, it's a pleasure. Connect with the guy on LinkedIn. Follow him on Twitter. Definitely follow NeuVector too, though, because anything Henrik does is he has the golden touch. And I'm on a rant now, but I mean it, guys. This is my advice to you: is find these people that are movers and shakers and hold on to them. Learn from them. And there's another guy, Steve Kaplan, out there. And a lot of you guys might know Steve. He's over at Nutanix now, and he emailed me when he first joined Nutanix and said, "What do you think of this company, Doug?" And I was like, "I don't quite understand." It was very early on. He said, "Doug, this is disruptive. This is it." And Steve is another one of those guys where Steve is, you should be. He was early at VMware. When he saw VMware, he's like, "This is the next big thing. These are the visionaries." You guys like this. Follow them. Hold on to them. Learn from them. Ask them questions and let them teach you. And you will be a better engineer. You'll be a better human being. Henrik's made me a better human being. So, again, I'm on a rant, but, I mean this stuff. And this is my advice to you, right? And this is the best thing I can share with you is a little bit of knowledge. And that's what DABCC tries to do, is to share knowledge with you, right? Make you better. You're as smart as your resources are. And here's another resource for you, has always been my mantra, right? So that being said, please, if you want more resources, check out dabcc.com, www.dabcc.com. Head over to the app stores, download our applications, our mobile apps, be it Android or iOS. And it's a great way to stay up to date with what's going on in our industry. It's actually a wonderful way to stay up to date with what's going on in our industry, and I think you guys will like it. Anywhere, anyplace, anytime. Just last week, I was at a sales call, sitting in waiting for someone to pick me up. I opened up, my phone and started plugging through apps. And when you're doing that, plug through the DABCC app. You can stay up with NeuVector and everybody else out there. Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, HP, Amazon, you name it, right? So on that note, guys, I want to thank you all for listening to dabcc.com. We're the reason, or you're the reason, we're a success. So what else do I say but... As always, I end my show. Thank you for listening to DABCC Radio.
Can you say DABCC?
DABC.
Say it again. DABCC.
DABC.
Can you say it again? DABCC.
DABC.
How about DABCC?
DABC.
DABCC.
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 DABCC.